If you're tired of watching other people win while you stay stuck in the same place, this message is your wake-up call. There is a shortcut to success, but it's not what motivational quotes tell you. It's something real, practical, and brutally honest. Today, you'll discover the fastest path to achieving great success, and it starts with changing what you do right now, not someday. The first shortcut, ruthless clarity. Ruthless clarity is the discipline of stripping your life down to what actually matters, not what sounds good, not what other people expect, and not what you pretend is important to avoid facing the truth. It's a brutal filter that forces you to identify exactly what you want, why you want it, and what you're willing to sacrifice to get it. Most people live in a fog, an emotional and mental haze where their desires are vague, their goals are loosely defined, and their decisions are reactive instead of intentional. Ruthless clarity is the opposite. It's the act of taking a mental scalpel and cutting away every distraction, excuse, and comfortable lie that keeps you from seeing your life objectively. You don't wait for motivation or inspiration. You focus on what is real, what is measurable, and what moves you closer to a result. When you approach your life with ruthless clarity, you stop overestimating your capabilities and underestimating your weaknesses. You acknowledge where you are without sugarcoating it. If your finances are a mess, you stop pretending one good month will fix everything. If your body is out of shape, you confront the habits you've allowed to control you. If your career is stagnant, you evaluate your skill gaps with honesty instead of blame. This form of self-assessment is uncomfortable because it forces you to abandon the fantasy versions of yourself that you've built up over the years. But without this level of truth, you will continue walking in circles, confusing movement with progress and effort with effectiveness. Ruthless clarity demands that you measure your life the way an engineer measures a machine, by function, by performance, and by outcome, not by intention. Another part of ruthless clarity is simplifying your priorities. Most people think they can chase 5 major goals at once and expect results, but the human brain isn't built for scattered ambition. When everything matters, nothing matters. You need one primary objective at a time, one mission that dictates your daily behavior. This doesn't mean you ignore the rest of your responsibilities. It means you allow one goal to dominate your focus until it becomes a concrete achievement instead of a lifelong wish. This kind of clarity transforms your energy, your choices, and your daily routines because it removes emotional noise. You begin operating strategically instead of emotionally. And that shift alone is enough to create momentum where you previously felt stuck. The second shortcut, remove the drains. Removing the drains from your life is not about minor lifestyle tweaks. It is about developing the courage to eliminate anything that quietly corrodes your potential. These drains often masquerade as small inconveniences, but over time, they erode both clarity and discipline. They dilute your focus, slow your momentum, and keep you stuck in patterns that feel comfortable but are deeply unproductive. Drains show up in the form of people who constantly undermine your confidence, habits that bleed your time, environments that keep you mentally foggy, and emotional loops that anchor you in self-doubt. Most people know they have these drains, yet they tolerate them out of guilt, fear, or simple inertia. The truth is that draining influences don't fade on their own, they expand. And unless you become intentional about cutting them off, they will quietly define your ceiling. To remove the drains, you first have to identify them with brutal honesty. That means looking at your routines, your relationships, your emotional triggers, and your distractions without sugarcoating anything. Ask yourself which activities leave you feeling mentally heavier than before you started. Ask which people in your life pull you backward instead of forward. Ask which environments make you shrink instead of stretch. Drains often hide in plain sight. The half-hour doom scrolling you justify as staying informed. The friend who disguises criticism as just being realistic, the cluttered workspace that suffocates your ability to think clearly, the late-night habits that sabotage your mornings. Awareness requires humility. You must be willing to call out the parts of your life that make you weaker, even if you've normalized them for years. Once identified, removal demands discipline. Eliminating drains is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront the emotional attachments behind them. You may have to set boundaries with people who expect unlimited access to your time and energy. You may need to redesign your daily structure, cut down your social exposure, regulate your digital consumption, or walk away from routines that feel comforting but keep you stagnant. This process can make you feel selfish at first, but it is actually an act of responsibility. You are reclaiming authority over your bandwidth, and that requires firm decisions. Removing drains isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. It's choosing silence over noise, depth over distraction, quality over familiarity. It's learning to protect your mental space the same way you protect your physical health. And as these drains disappear, what emerges is mental clarity, emotional stability, and a renewed sense of direction. You become sharper, more resilient, more capable of doing the work that matters because nothing is quietly pulling you backward anymore. The third shortcut: replace motivation with systems. Most people wait for motivation, like it's some magical fuel that will suddenly appear and push them into action. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. Motivation is inconsistent, unreliable, and heavily influenced by your emotional state. It rises and falls depending on how you slept, who spoke to you, what you ate, or whether you feel good about yourself that day. Relying on something so unstable is the fastest way to remain stuck, constantly restarting your goals every Monday, every new month, or every time life feels slightly easier. The weakness of motivation is that it needs emotion, but the strength of systems is that they don't care how you feel. A system functions whether you're tired, overwhelmed, stressed, or uninspired. It is a structure you build deliberately, so your actions no longer depend on willpower. Systems turn progress from a choice into a default, from something you try to something you follow automatically. When you understand that motivation is unreliable but systems are neutral, you stop expecting your brain to feel energized and instead design your environment, routines, and habits to make action non-negotiable. A system forces results because it eliminates the emotional negotiation that destroys most goals. Instead of waking up and asking yourself, "Do I feel like working today?" your system answers the question for you through structure. For example, if your goal is to get fit, relying on motivation means you will work out when you feel inspired. But with a system, your workout clothes are prepared the night before, your schedule has a fixed time block, and your environment is already set up to push you into action. No debating with yourself, no overthinking, just execution driven by design. The same applies to studying, building a business, or improving your mental health. Systems force consistency because they give your brain fewer chances to choose comfort. You build clear triggers, simple routines, and a predictable process that moves you forward regardless of your mood. Over time, systems reshape your identity. You stop saying, "I want to be disciplined," and start becoming disciplined through repetition. You stop depending on high energy days and start functioning powerfully even on low energy days. Systems don't make life easier. They make your progress automatic. And when your actions become automatic, your results become inevitable. The fourth shortcut: repeat one thing until it works. People underestimate how brutally simple success actually is. Not easy, simple. And the simplicity is this: pick one thing and repeat it long enough for it to finally break open. Most people don't fail because their goal is impossible. They fail because their attention span has the life expectancy of a spark. They start something, feel a little discomfort, get bored, get scared, or get distracted, and then they walk away before the results even have time to develop. Progress compounds, but it only compounds when you stop resetting the counter. When you commit to one direction, one skill, one platform, one strategy, one mission, and you stick with it long enough for the universe to stop doubting your seriousness, that's when it begins to reward you, not before. There's nothing glamorous about repetition. It's boring, it's predictable, and it feels painfully slow. But this is exactly why it works. Repetition eliminates confusion, builds identity, and removes the chaos created by constantly switching approaches. Most people focus on intensity instead of consistency. They burn themselves out in a week with unrealistic expectations and then conclude that they failed. But you don't fail because of lack of potential. You fail because you didn't give the process enough time. Think about how absurd it would be if someone planted a seed and dug it up every 3 days to check its progress. That's how most people treat their goals. You cannot grow anything: skills, businesses, relationships, influence, if you keep interrupting the process to chase a new dopamine hit. Mastery doesn't come from dabbling. It comes from suffocating every distraction and narrowing your focus down to the one thing that will move your life forward. When you repeat something, you don't just get better at the task, you get better at the person you must become to accomplish it. Repetition also reveals truth. The more you repeat a skill or a system, the more honest feedback you generate. You start to see what's working and what isn't, where you're sabotaging yourself, what you've been avoiding, and what strengths you've been underestimating. It forces you out of emotional decision making and into data driven action. That clarity alone is a form of progress. Once you repeat a system long enough, your brain rewires itself. The work becomes instinct. The discipline becomes automatic. The results become the natural byproduct of the identity you've built. People will call it talent. They will call it luck. But you'll know it was repetition, unexciting, unromantic, relentless repetition that created the life you're stepping into. The fifth shortcut: seek brutal feedback. Early, most people avoid honest feedback because it threatens their ego, but the truth is that avoiding criticism is exactly what keeps them stuck. If you want extraordinary success, you need to expose your ideas, your work, and your habits to people who won't soften the truth for you. Brutal feedback is uncomfortable because it forces you to face what you already suspect but don't want to admit: that your standards aren't high enough, your execution isn't sharp enough, and your perception of your own skill is often inflated. The faster you get this reality check, the faster you can correct your direction. Waiting until you feel ready or until you think you've perfected your work is the slowest strategy you can choose because it keeps you operating inside your own illusions instead of confronting the reality other people can see instantly. Early feedback acts like a compass. Without it, you wander blindly, moving with confidence but not accuracy. It's dangerous to assume that effort alone will carry you to the results you want. Effort without correction only builds deeper mistakes. When you invite people who are already ahead of you or who genuinely want you to grow to look at what you're doing, you get access to a perspective that you simply cannot develop on your own. They can see flaws you overlook, patterns you deny, or weaknesses you've normalized. They show you the gaps you've been stepping around for years, and the earlier you invite this discomfort, the less time you waste walking in the wrong direction. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they didn't correct the right things at the right time. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you choose hard feedback over easy validation. You signal to yourself that growth matters more than comfort. You train your mind to become resilient, to detach from the need to be right, and to embrace the need to improve. This shift is powerful because it kills the ego-driven need for perfection and replaces it with a far more productive mindset: the desire to refine. When you operate from refinement instead of perfection, you move faster, experiment more freely, and make progress without the emotional weight that usually slows people down. You stop treating feedback as an attack and start treating it as fuel. Eventually, the people who avoid criticism get left behind. They keep repeating the same errors, believing they're doing enough, while never understanding why nothing changes. But the people who seek brutal feedback early accelerate because every piece of hard truth sharpens them. They adapt faster, they grow stronger, they build success on reality, not imagination. The sixth shortcut: obsessive personal responsibility. Obsessive personal responsibility is the moment you stop waiting for life to hand you anything and finally recognize that everything, your outcomes, your habits, your failures, your growth, is on you. It's not about blaming yourself for every setback. It's about claiming the power to influence every part of your life. Most people spend years outsourcing their potential to circumstances, family, luck, or timing. They're convinced their life would change if only someone helped them, encouraged them, understood them. But high performers operate from a completely different frame. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen because I do something about it. This mindset rewires your psychology. Instead of thinking the world needs to shift for you to rise, you shift yourself until the world has no choice but to respond. When you take responsibility at this level, excuses start to feel physically uncomfortable. There's no longer any emotional payoff in acting helpless, and your mind becomes trained to search for action, not justification. When you choose obsessive responsibility, you stop negotiating with the parts of yourself that resist difficulty. You stop narrating your limitations as if they're permanent traits. You stop needing external validation to move. You instead begin observing your behaviors with brutal honesty, breaking down exactly where you fall short without spiraling into self-loathing. You learn to hold two truths at once. You are capable of far more, and nothing will change unless you intentionally raise your standard. This shift destroys the subtle victimhood we all unconsciously carry. It forces you to confront where you've been passive, indecisive, or easily influenced. It makes you hyper-aware of your emotional reactions and the choices that follow them. And it turns your attention inward, toward discipline, restraint, self-correction, and the pursuit of a stronger identity. because personal responsibility isn't about achieving perfection. It's about refusing to tolerate patterns that keep you small. This mindset also creates a psychological environment where growth becomes unavoidable. When you assume responsibility for your mindset, your productivity, your relationships, and even your frustrations, you start to act proactively instead of reactively. You anticipate problems instead of panicking when they appear. You build systems that protect your progress instead of relying on willpower that constantly collapses under pressure. You become someone whose default setting is ownership, not emotional reactivity. And eventually, the world starts to read you differently. You're taken more seriously, trusted more deeply, and respected for the consistency you demonstrate. Because responsibility changes how you speak, how you show up, and how you carry yourself. It becomes the foundation of every meaningful transformation you will ever attempt. At the end of the day, success doesn't belong to the lucky, it belongs to the disciplined. If you want a different life, build different habits and guard them ruthlessly. Take responsibility, take action, and take the first step today. Your future self is already watching. Don't let them down.